Ozzie the Finder. There are 3 facts about Ozzie that will never change. 1. Ozzie was a good dog, a great dog even. He just had one problem, which is fact number 2. He was a roamer, which, for a farm dog, isn't the worst thing he could be if he was just roaming the woods around the house. Tom called it patrolling, Maddie called it what it was, roaming. He always came back within 4 hours. The longest he ever pushed was almost 5 hours. Sunset was closing in when Tom and Maddie climbed into their cars to start searching. With impeccable timing, Ozzie came bounding back with something in his mouth. Fact number 3. Ozzie was a finner. He always returned from his roaming adventures with a gift, a spoil, or a token carried softly in his mouth. These objects were presented to Tom and Maddie for approval. Sometimes, Sonic was startled by Ozzie loping out of the brush in the middle of one of his runs to lay something at his feet. Sonic's favorite gift was the head of a dried sunflower with a kind note thanking whoever the Wachowskis were for having such a kind, polite dog. Sonic was utterly delighted to pick and eat the sunflower seeds, but Donut Lord and Pretzel Lady were rather disturbed to Google the address and realize just how far Ozzie was roaming. He'd either gone over to the next beat through the wilderness, or had taken the much shorter route and crossed 2 mountain roads and a small highway. After that day, Ozzie's roaming ended. At least, that was the plan. He would come when called, but sometimes when one of them turned their back to Ozzie for too long, he'd disappear with hardly a disturbed leaf or branch to tell where he'd gone. One autumn day, they were picking up sticks in the yard from a days-old storm. Their backs turned for a moment too long on the golden retriever, and Ozzie melted into the brush like a ghost, with the Wachowskis being none the wiser. Their calls to Ozzie never reached the retriever's ears as he plodded through the forest, sniffing and patrolling his normal route. It had been 2 weeks since he last got out. He had spots to mark and a special someone to visit. Ozzie had his routine, his route of things to smell and trees to bark up. His nose pulled apart thousands of scents unearthed by this storm. Trees that had been standing were now fallen. Roots upturned, debris from up the mountain was washed down, bringing every scent of animal and plant with it. So when he got to the tree, he found it broken and on the ground, tarps and tools scattered and half buried in mud. Their smell was still here. Ozzie barked. No reply. He barked again, and caught the sound and smell of something. Ozzie sniffed around the tree and started digging. Sonic was up in his room. He wanted to go out and search, but the last thing Maddie and Tom wanted was 2 of their boys lost on the mountain. He took offense to that. He'd never get lost. Trust that Ozzie will come home, is what they said, and Sonic shrugged. It was wet and cold outside. He really didn't want to ruin his new running shoes so soon after he got them. Out of the corner of his eye, Sonic saw Ozzie emerge from the woods, black with dirt and mud almost from head to tail, awkwardly dragging his largest spoil to date, a dirty carpet. Sonic didn't get up from his spot on the sill window. He could hear Tom and Maddie's concerned calls and see the 2 of them running beat Ozzie. Sonic smirked as he shook the mud from his fur onto the 2 humans and Maddie's Subaru. Tom and Maddie's cries pulled a chuckle out of Sonic, who watched eagerly as the humans tried and failed to keep clean. His smile dropped when the tone of their voices pitched with panic. Maddie picked up and held close to her chest like a baby the carpet Ozzie found as Tom held Ozzie back by the collar, as if they were afraid of Ozzie stealing it back as he barked and barked and barked. Sonic's squeals raised at the sound. It wasn't a happy bark. It was a concerned one. His ear flicked to the opening door and Sonic leaped from the windowsill and met Maddie carrying a muddy limp, furry form, as she was halfway through the kitchen towards the bathroom.
"Blueberry, get me 5 towels, big ones,"
was all Maddie said as she hustled into the bathroom. Sonic retrieved the towels and put them in a neat pile at Maddie's hip as she started the bath. Sonic peeked around her at a small, huddled form of an animal. His heart sank. It looked dead.
Poor thing.
Sonic thought. He'd seen so many animals that didn't make it in nature. The elements nearly took him several times until he got smarter. But something was off with this animal. It looked like a fox, but the head was rather big. And when Maddie lifted him into the tub, Sonic sped forward, leaning over the edge to get a closer look. He had arms and gloved hands like him. Sonic reached out to the boy in the shallow bath water.
Get the shampoo first, Blueberry.
Maddie commanded. The dirt and grime melted off in the water. Underneath was bright yellow fur, and a very odd-looking fox with two tails. He was covered in scrapes and bruises, and Maddie patched him up with deft hands. She had him swaddled in warm towels on the couch to warm up, but it became obvious he was sick. She got up to get medicine for his fever. Sonic sat next to the fox kit with an arm around his swaddle to keep him steady. He gave the fox gentle pats like Maddie did for him or Donut Lord when they were wrapped up on the couch pitifully and had fevers. The two tails were bound in the towels out of sight, but Sonic couldn't get them out of his head. He scratched Ozzie's head as the dog rested his chin on Sonic's thigh. Ozzie just gave a huff and a gentle lick of the swaddle. He couldn't take his eyes off the fox either. Sonic would have zoned out when he heard a mumbling and shifting in the swaddle, and his attention snapped to the blurry, half-lidded eyes of the yellow fox. The fox moaned, blinking slowly with one lid dragging half a second behind the other. The fox licked his lips and looked at Sonic. He was only half there. Sonic could tell. Sonic smiled. The fox squinted. Then he groggily spoke.
Oh, it's too soon for contact.
Sonic's face screwed into a curious half-smile. He said that like he was someone from Star Trek observing an uncontacted planet.
Broke the Prime Directive.
Sonic joked, but the fox was already out again.
Mom, you find the fever pills? He's waking up, I think.
1 second.
Maddie yelled from the kitchen before she was on the other side of the fox.
He's out, but I think we can unwrap him now. He's warmed up enough now. I don't want him to get too hot. Did he do anything?
He spoke.
Sonic helped unwrap the fox, and his eyes fixated on the twin tails.
He's like me. He's like me.
Sonic said the last part with such reverence that Maddie leaned over and kissed his head.
I think he is Blueberry.
Can he stay in my room?
Hey, don't get ahead of the situation, Sonic. We are going to stay out here with him tonight. Tom is napping and is gonna take over in a few hours. You are going to go to bed and...
Sonic was gone and back in a blink of an eye, on a perfectly assembled camping spot on the floor.
I'll camp here tonight.
Sonic was in his sleeping bag looking up at the tail that had fallen over the edge of the couch with a soft smile. Maddie could almost hear his thoughts.
He's like me.
Maybe their son had felt more lonely and isolated than they thought. She was so happy that he had this newfound contentment, but she worried. If this fox didn't stick around, or was after Sonic like those other aliens, then that contentment could easily twist into something dark and painful. Only the morning would be able to tell. Miles tried to open his eyes, but they felt heavy and sticky. He wiped his eyes with such poor coordination that he yelped as a fist collided with his face. Voices barely registered in his mind, soft and coming from not too far away. A wet nose against his cheek, and familiar scent hit his nose, and Ma's eyes snapped open to see he was cuddled against the dog, Ozzie, the Wachowski dog that found him at his observation post and would hang out for half an hour before leaving. The dog that let Miles pet and hug on days he was lonely on this alien planet and sometimes brought him gifts. He kept those in his tree.
Oh, 'cause the tree?
Miles remembered everything. He was trapped in the mud under the tree for 2 days. He was barely conscious when something started to dig him out. He thought a predator had finally found him. He let out a shuddering breath as the anxiety left his body and was replaced with relief that it must have been Ozzie. So where was he now? Miles scanned the room. Couch, blanket, ceiling, Sonic, kitchen, his eyes locked with the broadly smiling face of his target.
Mom, he's up.
Sonic shouted over his shoulder, and Tails felt himself fluff up as he saw 2 humans running toward the couch. Sonic's voice pulled Miles' attention back to those green eyes.
Don't worry, they're really nice. My parents stayed up all night making sure your fever broke.
Oh no.
Miles' twin tails curled around him.
It's too soon. It wasn't done this soon.
He saw only kindness in Sonic's eyes and in the humans' faces. Deep relief in their expressions too.
Maybe it will be fine.
They were concerned for him. They weren't afraid either, as they asked questions and offered him food.
Can I call you Tails?
Sonic interjected himself between Miles' thoughts, and Miles bristled at first at the name, but he was surprised. and pleasantly so, when Sonic added.
They are so cool. You're different like me.
The innocent relief in Sonic's voice combined Ma's observation that Sonic only gave nicknames for two reasons. Either he really liked someone, or he hated them. Based on context, it was probably the former. Tails gave Sonic a small smile.
Yeah, I think I was overly cautious for nothing.